Welcome to the Marketing Mixtape podcast, hosted by me, Brittany Winfield of the Winfield Creative. If you have a burning marketing question, submit it at speakpipe.com/marketingmixtape, and we'd love to get it answered on a future episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe, baby! And if you're really feeling like it, leave us a review, so that way we can find more listeners just like you. But for now, sit tight, because now it's time for the Marketing Mixtape podcast. Let's go! Hello, and welcome to another fabulous episode of the Marketing Mixtape podcast. My name is Brittany Winfield, and I am the Chief Inspiration Officer of the Winfield Creative, which is just a fancy word for owner. I liked how it sounded, so I made it up. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about how to predict trends on social media. And this makes me especially happy because this is a social media strategy that I actually relied pretty heavily on, and I still rely heavily on it as I was building the social media profile, especially on Instagram, of the Winfield Creative. And as you can imagine, it was a lot of pressure that I put on myself to gain followers rapidly as a social media manager. In my eyes, it builds credibility as a social media manager to have a strong social media presence, as you can imagine. So hopping on trends was a way that I gained more reach, more visibility for the business quicker than if I were to only come up with original content, which for somebody like me takes a lot of brain power. And if you're anything like me, sometimes you just need to take a break from that, and hopping on trends is a great strategy to adopt in your social media marketing plan. Trends come in all different forms, shapes, sizes, depending on the platform. In this episode, I'm going to be talking more heavily about Instagram and a little bit about TikTok, because that's really where trends were born, and they are just more prevalent there. And also, it's easier to find trends on those platforms. So trends can be anything from audios. It could be using popular songs. It could be the way you create content. It could be referring to a certain pop culture reference. It could be a dance, which is typically how people imagine trends happen on TikTok, which is a myth. We'll talk about that later. But trends, they come and go. They realistically only have 2 weeks on a social media platform before they die out. Some of them, obviously, there's an exception. I know the Barbie trends went on for a while just because that movie was in the box office pretty heavily for about 30 days. But trends, typically, they have kind of like a cycle of, there's early adopters, which are far and few between. Oftentimes, those are people that spend more time on social media that pick up on these clues. So we will talk about how to become an early adopter, which is super important, because then you're almost like an original creator, not an original creator. You can obviously originally create a trend, which then picks up, but you definitely want to be in this early adopter phase, because then it becomes super, super popular, which then saturates the trend. And then you see this dip where it climaxes and then it falls. Sometimes it plateaus, where a trend will stick around for a week or so, but then it has this fall off, kind of like a roller coaster. Imagine in your brain where, you're climbing, and then you go over and then it falls and then the trend dies, unfortunately. Wah, wah. Sometimes trends are seasonal, like this podcast episode is being recorded, in later September. So we see these autumn, these Halloween seasonal trends popping up again. So there are some exceptions based on what trend we're referring to. But generally, trends come and go within a 2-week period. So it's super important to push yourself, challenge yourself to adopt the trend while it is in these early stages. I know you're probably asking yourself now, like, hey, Brittany, I'm not a fortune teller. I left my crystal ball at home. How do I know if a trend is actually about to become a trend and skyrocket in popularity? How do I know that it's not just happenstance? And here's exactly what I tell my clients and that I tell myself whenever I am looking for, trends to hop onto on my Instagram page. If I see something twice thematically on my newsfeed, that's a coincidence. Somebody uses the same song twice, okay, I'll give them that. But if I see something three times, especially from three different industries, three different creators, that, my friend, is the birth of a trend. And that is the perfect time to hop on that trend for a few reasons. One, you're an early adopter. That means that you are able to have more creative freedom, but with guidance, but with a little bit of boundaries. I use that word lightly, more guidance than anything of what to use, but you still have that creative freedom to spin it to your industry, spin it to your business, spin it to your target audience, especially if the creators are of different, service types, of different industry types. You are able to, in a way, create original content for your specific audience, but with some guidance that you don't have to come up with that idea completely on your own. Another reason why this is really important, the timing to hop on these trends, is the entirety of the trend is not yet saturated. There aren't a million creators using that audio yet, which is super important because then that really is making you an early adopter. You start to gain the views, you start to reach more people. So people are actually using your reel, your TikTok as inspiration to then spin it to their own perspectives. And that's super important. That is establishing credibility in your field. Another way to tell if a trend is actually like about to skyrocket or has been, and maybe it's just making its way to your newsfeed now, is when you are questioning that, click into the audio and see how many reels have been created using that audio. And even more so, within that audio, how have people been able to spin it into the perspective of their industry, of their profile, of their persona, their brand, and see if you can find inspiration through that. See what about that reel for them made it popular. Okay, so we talked about why it's important to be an early adopter of trends, but now I'm going to teach you three different ways to actually find trends as an early adopter so you can really make sure that your newsfeed is helping you. My goal in life is to teach you how to save time to get off of social media. And one of the ways I do that is by sacrificing my own time to find trends so that way you don't have to. So, the first way to find trends in trending audio is actually just a shameless plug because I want to let you all know that every single Monday I send out a Viral Vibes e-blast to all my email subscribers. 6 a.m. Mondays, it goes out with audio links to trending audios and trends that are happening on social media. So that way you don't have to spend the time to go and find them. They're just literally dropped in your inbox. So shameless plug for the Winfield Creative. If you go to the winfieldcreative.com/viral vibes, you'll be able to subscribe to that. And I'll even send you 5 bonus audios right now of songs that have just stayed. I kind of like refer to them as evergreen audios instead because they have stayed trending consistently for the last 5 years. They're really like the OG original songs of, this whole trend culture. So, shameless plug, sign up for Viral Vibes every single Monday at 6 a.m. I drop a whole bunch of audios that are already trending in your inbox. So, yeah, thanks for doing that. Okay, number 2. One of the things you should be doing is training your algorithm, training your newsfeed to work for you. Work smarter, not harder. And so I recommend following social media managers, following trend accounts that especially work to find trends in your niche. That's important because there is a social media manager for everything. I'm a social media manager for women owned businesses. You're not going to see me using hardcore rap. I'm not going to be promoting trends that, you know, don't work for my target audience. I know social media managers who work with just interior designers, some that work only with hairdressers. So those social media managers, it's important to find that work within your industry so that way you can really niche out the trends based on your specific industry. So trend accounts are great. They are just a little bit more generalized and they are doing more of what's overall on the landscape of social media and Instagram. They are promoting what's trendy, but social media managers who specifically work with people in your industry, super, super, super important. On the more general side of things, like big social media managers that I recommend, I always love following Shannon McKinstry and Brock Johnson. And they are just role models of my own. So if you need a place to start, I would start with them. And oftentimes you'll be able to find social media managers that do things within your industry following those people because we all look up to them. And then method number 3. So the beauty thing about all these platforms popping up, especially TikTok, is, there'll be some competitive advantages of using TikTok versus Instagram. There's some pros to using Instagram and not TikTok. But one of the beauty things about these platforms being so segmented is trends are kind of born on TikTok and then eventually they make their way to Instagram. So if you are somebody who posts on Instagram, your target audience is on Instagram, that is your golden, nugget, that is your platform that you use, I would recommend actually signing up for TikTok, even if you don't do anything with it, and using TikTok to find trends within your industry, trends in general. Do that same method of following social media managers, following trend accounts, and when you start to see trends pop up on TikTok, know that in about 2 weeks, they will pop up on Instagram. Instagram takes a hot minute. So if you're looking to be an early adopter on Instagram, one of the best ways to do that is to start on TikTok and to find trends on TikTok and then have them ready at the get-go because eventually they'll make their way to Instagram. Yeah. And that's another way I've been able to really hop on as an early adopter on Instagram. But there are 3 ways. So whatever works for you, if all 3 work for you, definitely plugging number 1 again. So if you want a way to stay connected to me, I recommend checking out the winfieldcreative.com/viral vibes, and I will send you all of those trending audios that I personally pick out for women-owned businesses. Every single Monday at 6 a.m., they go into your inbox. But yeah, that is our episode for today. Again, I'm Brittany Winfield of the Winfield Creative. To summarize how to predict trends, anything can become a trend. Generally, looking at pop culture references, knowing that trends really only land on social media and last for 2 weeks is important to know. Once you see something 3 times, that is the time to hop on to that trend, increase your credibility, especially within your specific industry, and make sure that you subscribe to the Winfield Creative's email news blast that sends you those viral vibes every single week. Thank you all for joining me today. It has been a pleasure teaching you just one more thing about social media so you can spend less time online while still remaining effective in your marketing strategy. Until next time, bye. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Marketing Mixtape podcast brought to you by the Winfield Creative. If you enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you could like and subscribe and leave a review and do all the things so that way we can find more people just like you. And if you still have burning marketing questions that you want answered, be sure to submit them now at speakpipe.com/marketingmixtape. Until next time, this is Brittany Winfield with the Winfield Creative, signing off.